How's it going, YouTube? It's time to give this devil his due. Today we're going to do a little bit of EDH talk with Raphael, Fiendish Savior. I'm also doing this as a dual upload. I've also done this as a historic brawl deck, and there's another video, and the link will be around here somewhere in there. But in the meanwhile, we're going to talk about the EDH version that I'd like to try out and see what you guys think of it, because historic brawl, let's face it, is not for everyone. Not everyone likes to play MTG Arena. So I'm kind of giving this out there for people who like either or. Down in the description will be a full deck list to do with as you will. And at the end of the video, I'll kind of give like a little bit of a price breakdown with a couple variations on the deck itself. But in the meanwhile, let's get into the devilish details. Let's start with the commander himself. Again, he's over here. Raphael, Fiendish Savior. For 3, a black and red, you get a 4/4 legendary creature, Demon Noble, that says that all other devils, demons, imps, and tieflings get +1/+1 and have lifelink. And at the beginning of each end step, if one of your creatures went to the graveyard from anywhere, and that includes milling, discarding, or death, you get a 1/1 devil creature token that says when it dies, deal 1 damage to any target. So basically, I built this deck as being a tribal commander around those 4 types of creatures. There's a few that are not in that classification, but they help synergize with the deck and have little ancillary effects that complement the deck more than anything else. So let's get into some of the other cards, and I'll just go ahead and switch to a different screen to show those to you guys. All right, the first recommendation that I have, and this is one of the most expensive recommendations, is Archfiend of Despair. For 6 black, you get a demon that is a 6/6 flyer that says your opponents can't gain life, and at the beginning of each end step, each opponent loses life equal to the life that player lost this turn. That doesn't mean just the damage that you deal, that's damage that they've dealt to themselves from shock lands, fetch lands. That means if your other opponents are smacking them around, whatever happens to be the case, they're going to get hit by this demon. It's very good, but it's very expensive at $45 as of the time of this recording, and it only has 1 printing to its name in Battle Bond. Stopping the life gain is useful, but there are other cards in black and red that do the same effect, such as Roiling Vortex. For 1 in a red, you get an enchantment that says at the beginning of each player's upkeep, it deals 1 damage to them, and whenever a player casts a spell, if they spent no mana on the spell, it deals 5 damage to them, and then you can pay a red to stop life gain for your opponents for that turn. This is a little more reasonable cost-wise in terms of mana, and it's only $1 versus $45. That's a big cost savings to get a same effect that you would want there. It also happens to punish players trying to cheat spells into the battlefield for free, so I kind of like that as just a bonus. If you're looking for the other half of the Archfiend's ability, then I would look at something like Wound Reflection. For 5 and a black, you get an enchantment that reads verbatim the second half of the demon. At the beginning of each end step, each opponent loses life equal to the life that player lost this turn. Right now, it's going for about $8.50, and you get the entire second effect of the demon strapped on the enchantment, which is a lot harder to kill than the demon and costs a lot less in terms of cash. My next recommendation, and it's also in the pricier category, is Fiendish Duo. For 4 red, you get a devil with 5. It's a 5/5 first striker that says if a source would deal damage to an opponent, it deals double that damage to that player instead. This is an on-theme devil for the deck, but unless you happen to have one of these laying around because it came from one of the game night supplemental things they put out a few years ago, it's pretty expensive at $26. It's also only doubles the damage of the opponent being hit, not their creatures in combat. So instead, I would recommend something like Gratuitous Violence. For 2 red, you get an enchantment, so it's a little harder to kill too, that says creatures you control deal double damage to players or permanents. This means that the fiendish horde of demons and imps and tieflings and stuff are going to deal double damage at all times, regardless if they're hitting a player, a creature, or a planeswalker even, and it only costs about $3. The next 2 cards I have up are replacements for things I have in the deck for Historic Brawl, but these versions were not put into the MTG Arena client. They were alchemized. First up is Balor. For 3 red, you get a demon, which is a 5/5 flyer that says when it attacks or dies, choose one or more modes. Each mode must target a different player, and there's 3 modes on it. First mode is target opponent draws 3 cards and discards 3 at random. Target opponent sacrifices a non-token artifact, or Balor deals damage to target opponent equal to the number of cards in their hand, i.e. sudden impact. This is a reasonably priced demon for its size. It's a 5/5 flyer for 5, and it has a repeatable effect as long as it stays alive, and it has a punishment effect if someone just tries to kill it outright, and it's quite reasonably priced at $3 right now. The other card that I'm replacing from the alchemized version is Karlach, Fury of Avernus. For 4 and a red, you get a Tiefling Barbarian 5/4 that says whenever you attack, if it's the first combat phase of the turn, untap all attacking creatures. They gain first strike until end of turn, and after this phase, there's an additional combat. Choose a background. The choose a background part is part of the backgrounds from the Commander Legends 2 set. If you want to use her for a different deck or different color variation, or you may even want to put a black background with her in this deck and have her lead it. That's up to you. Just like Balor, this version doesn't exist in the clients, so this is going to add some spice to the Fiends in the deck, granting a second combat and first strike and messing with combat math, and it's about $1.50, so pretty reasonable. Dipping back into some older demons that don't hit the client just yet, we have Archfiend of Depravity. For 3 black, you get a 5/4 flying demon that says at the beginning of each opponent's end step, that player chooses up to 2 creatures they control and then sacrifices the rest. As long as the Archfiend is around, your opponent is stuck with whatever their 2 best creatures are at any given moment, which limits their options and keeps their available pressure in check, and being a reasonable price flyer makes this a very good addition to the deck. Speaking of a reasonable and a good flyer for the deck, we have up next Cadaver Imp. For 1 black, you get a 1/1 flying imp that says whenever it enters the battlefield, you may return target creature from your graveyard to your hand. Let's face it, your stuff is going to die, and as you're pitching them headlong into your opponent, you're going to want to get some of them back. This is an on-theme way, being an imp, to get a creature back and then use it again, and it's one of the rare imps that actually are pretty decent in Magic, because most imps just kind of suck. Another decent imp here is Chaos Imps. For 4 red, you get a 6/5 flying imp that has Unleash, which means you can have it enter the battlefield with a counter on it. But if it has a counter, +1/+1 counter on it, it can't block. It says Chaos Imps has Trample if it has a counter on it. So you can either have a 6/5 flyer, or you can have a 7/6 Trample flyer, but it can't block. So whatever you want to use it with, that's your choice. But for 13 cents, you're going to get a big, fat, beefy imp that can just smash in. And with Raphael giving it lifelink, you're going to get a big chunk of life back too. Next up, we have a couple of the more recent cards. We have Lorcan Warlock Collector. For 5 black, you get a 6/6 Flying Devil that says whenever a creature is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, you may pay life equal to its mana value. If you do, put it onto the battlefield under your control. It's a Warlock in addition to its other types, and if a Warlock you control would die, you exile it instead. So if the creatures you get back from them die later, they just get exiled. So double bonus, you get to steal their stuff, and if they kill it, it's gone for the rest of the game anyways. So this guy's a pretty good sized devil. You can start stealing their stuff by paying life, and the nice part is then you have the lifelink off of Raphael, and you just gain the life back and keep doing it until eventually they just die. I also saw that Arena does not include Mahadi Emporium Master. For 1 black, you get a 3/3 Cat Devil that says at the beginning of your end step, create treasure tokens for each creature that died this turn. Again, just like I was saying earlier with the Cadaver Imp, creatures are going to die in this deck, and that's fine because you're going to be running them into your opponent, and you want them to die, especially the little devils because they deal damage directly. And so as those things die, you're going to get a treasure token, which then also helps you cast some of these larger and more expensive demons that are in the deck. And it's a fairly cheap card at 11 cents. Next up is a little more expensive card from my choices here. It's $10 as of the recording right now, but it only was printed in a pre-con. Sower of Discord. For 4 black, you get a 6/6 Flying Demon, and it says, as this enters the battlefield, choose 2 players. Whenever damage is dealt to one of the chosen players, the other chosen player also loses that much life. This is a political card for this deck. If someone wants to make a deal with you to not get linked to the demon, well, let's see if we can make a deal here. You're beating me up or killing my stuff? Okay, I'll make you a deal. You don't get linked to the demon if you quit killing my stuff. Deal? Good. Let's move on. Since we're playing some more of the pricier mana costs of higher level demons in this deck, let's take a look at Rectos, Lord of Riots. For black, black, red, red, you get a 6/6 flying trample demon that says you can't cast this spell unless an opponent lost life this turn. Creature spells you cast cost 1 less for each life your opponent's lost to this turn. So as long as Rakdos, Lord of Riots, is in play, and you start smacking your opponent around for however many life they've lost this turn, that many colorless mana is knocked off. So like, say you have that Fiend of Depravity or something like that, and you smack somebody around for enough, you could pay just black, black and get that thing into play. The nice part about Rectos is he's a really good body. For 4 mana, you get a 6/6 flying trampler, and he's cheap to boot at $4. Speaking of big, expensive demons, we have Zafra Demon. For 3 black, 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 you get a 7/7 flying trample demon that says at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice a creature other than this, and then each opponent loses life equal to the sacrificed creature's power. If you can't sacrifice a creature, tap Zafra Demon and you lose 7 life. You get some fat stats for that mana cost, and you can start sacrificing some of your other big demons, 6/6s, 7/6s, that kind of stuff, and start just blasting your opponent's life totals out in big chunks. To close the video out, I have a couple of non-creature options that I'm considering. The first one I wasn't going to recommend because it's expensive and it's super stupid powerful. So if you're playing on more of a competitive level of EDH or a higher power EDH, then you could probably consider Necro Potence. For black, 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 you get an enchantment that says skip your draw step, and whenever you discard a card, exile it from your graveyard. Pay a life, exile the top card of your library face down, put the card into your hand at the beginning of your next end step. As I said before, I wasn't going to recommend this, but it works so well with Raphael's life-linking ability on your creatures that if you, pay a bunch of life into this and then smash somebody with a bunch of your devils and demons and whatnot, you're going to gain it all back anyways, so it doesn't really matter. You're basically drawing cards for free. But if you can't afford to pay, the $40-ish that Necro Potence is going for these days, or you're afraid of the power level of Necro Potence, because maybe you want to play a little more casually, then I do have a recommendation that's a little more reasonable in Baleful Force. For 5 black, 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 you get an elemental that's a 7/7 that says at the beginning of each upkeep, you lose a life and draw a card. So, normally this thing will get out of hand and it'll start to kill you after a few turn cycles, but just like with the Necro Potence, you have plenty of life gain available to offset this downside, and it'll only set you back about 50 cents versus the $40 for the Necro Potence. So in the end, the choice is yours how you want to build this deck. You can build it on a higher power level and use cards like the Necro Potence, the Fiend of Depravity, Meat Hook Massacre, things like that, and you're going to pay, let me check my notes over here, about $366 worth of cards, not including the basic lands. If you want to go with a more casual or the lower powered route and use some of the substitutions that I recommended, you're going to go about, $234 instead. And you're going to save yourself about $130 going that route. So if you don't have a lot of these cards in your collection, I wouldn't rush out and buy a bunch of the more expensive stuff. I would probably try to go with the lower power route, because either way, it's a lot of fun playing this deck. I've been playing it in Historic Brawl on Arena, and I decided I wanted to try to mess with it in Paper Commander as well, so that's why this video is being made. So I want to know what you think. Do you like the deck? Do you not like the deck? Do you have recommendations I've overlooked? Do you think that I shouldn't be using certain cards here? Do you think some of these recommendations just flat out suck? Let me know below in the comments. And please, if you like what I'm doing here, please like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, thank you for watching and have a great day.